Okay, hi everyone. Okay, so we are now waiting for the speakers to log in. Okay, hi, hello, Mr. Swan and Mr. Gregors.
Hi.
Hi.
So
Okay, so how are you guys doing?
good. Good.
Great. Okay.
It's
Yeah,
a
so
bit cold
now
in the office due to the rain.
I
One.
think the room is different, right? Compared to
It's the
previous
same
one.
room.
The
Just
same
a,
room. Oh, okay.
just a different angle.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. All right. So I already shared your two slides with the participants. So and also you both are the co-hosts. So if you want to just sharing your screen now, yeah, because all I think we only have another one participant. So if you want to start, also can. One participant who haven't logged in. Okay.
Okay, I think
Right.
let's start with introducing ourselves first.
Okay, sure.
So you are recording this session, right? Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So good afternoon to all the participants. I can see we have about 10 people here. As good as it's about 9 people here. Welcome to this series of Green RE. So this session will be handled by myself. My name is Suwan and we have Gregors here. So both of us are from IEM Consultants. So you want to explain a bit about our company or?
Sure. I mean, just briefly told, we are green building consultants and have been operating here in Malaysia since year 2000. So we have a lot of green building projects behind us, and we'll be happy to share some of our lessons and knowledge with you today.
Great. So if you can hear me well, see us here, can you just type in one so that just to make sure that we are not speaking, nobody listen to us for the next 1 hour. Okay. Okay, I see Timothy. Hi, Timothy. And oh, hi. Yes, great. Azwan, yes. So we actually wanted this session to be a little bit more interactive. And if you have any questions, just pop by, just type in the chat or just stop us anytime. We want to be as much flexible as we can, right? And so let's get into it. The first sections will be handled by myself, which is indoor environmental quality. And the next sessions will be green innovative design, where you will discover much more different things from Gregors, and from a different perspective, different point of view, what is green innovative all about within the building design. But before that, just let me just share my screen. Right. If you can see my screen, can you just type in 2 if you can see my screen? Good. So since we have been introduced ourselves, I also want you to introduce yourself. Perhaps just do me a favor, just go to www.menti.com and key in this code 67538360. I just type in the chat. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're coming from, what's your background, okay, so that we can tailor our material today to you, right? code is 67538360. Yeah. If anyone just join in, I see some names just join in. Welcome to Green IE session series of IEQ, Indoor Environmental Quality and Green Innovative Design by myself and Gregors. And if you're just new here, perhaps just help us to go to www.menti.com. Just key in the code in the chat and let's see, let's tell us about your background. Oops, let me share my screen. So we have a sustainability consultant, our colleague. We have architecture in education, environmental sustainable design engineer working in consultancy firm. Great. We have mechanical engineer, we have consultant, we have electrical engineer. We have 20 years in project management. Great, welcome. Anyone else? I see about 6 response. We have 4 more response. Oh, hi Azwan, senior project engineer in KJ Technical Service. Yep, okay, ACMV and DCS system. Great, welcome. And any more? Okay, I see a mixture of ESD consultant, electrical engineer, project management, and also mechanical engineer, and we have one architect here. Great. And next questions, perhaps from your perspective, what you think about building a green? Does it cost more? Does it more expensive? Or is expensive in the beginning, or actually in the long run is actually not, considering all the benefits and all the things that come with building green? So we have 4 saying yes, expensive, 5 saying yes, expensive. Any more? So we will have a room of everybody saying yes, expensive this time. Okay, almost 100% saying expensive to build green. Okay, we will see about that after this talk. Will it change your mind, or you are still thinking so? Hope you can see the screen, right? Right, the full screen. Right, thank you for that. And let's move on. I always started with this picture at the beginning of the talk. This is doubt to be politician discussing about climate change. So this is a statue back in 2011, and suddenly they have a rain over it, and people just take photo, and which is pretty true, right? When a politician discussing about climate change, this is what we got, because climate change are not meant to be discussing about it, but we have to act about it, right? And before that, just use the chat room so that I can see. Any one of you really love to go travel, let's say for example, Maldives, right? Just type in M in the chat if you really love to go to the beach, seeing sunset. Yes, Azwan say yes. Maldives, yes, let's go to the Maldives. If you have the resources, if you have the time, why not, right? Let's go to the Maldives. Alia say yes, Timothy yes. Right. So let me introduce one place for you, which is very similar to Maldives, but it's at the East Pacific Island. At the east of Pacific Sea is one of the island. It's called Kiribati. Yeah, the pronunciation is called Kiribati. And this island, right, is very interesting. It's almost same as Maldives. So if you look from the sky, you can see beautiful beaches, you can see beautiful panoramic view, and all these island. You can see one of the things that you have thought in the heaven, and you can see all these white sand. But what if I tell you, yep, there's about 120,000 of population staying there with their own tradition, yeah, with their own dance. But this country is actually at the forefront of the effect of the climate change. You can see this girl, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Tawa Titabo, 8 years old. She born there, she has moved for almost 3 times in her lifetime, 8 years old. Because the place that she's staying cannot be stayed anymore. Okay, the sea level has risen to the level that it has inundated the house. So she has been living in constant fear every single night. This one, the photo where the sea level rises and go into the house. And we actually have a colleague where she had a bad experience from last year, one of the biggest flood in Malaysia, right? She's staying in Taman Sri Muda. So I remember when she shared about her experience, one of the words that she's saying is powerless. She is actually powerless in dealing with all this climate disaster. And you can see the same fear, the same feeling, the same facial expression from this girl. I'm afraid because we cannot stop the rising level. So you are looking at an island where the highest point is 3 meters. So that is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I think the son of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, one of the NBA star, right? The best center of all time is Gregor's good friend. The son is Gregor's good friend. And he's about 2.18 meter high. And for this island, the highest point is only 3 meters. And look, I'm just about 1.6 meters, something like that. So if you look at, this is the simulation that they did with the current rising sea level, we are looking at the country gone at the year of 2100, which is less than 80 years old, less than 80 years from now. And you are saying that, yes, climate change is tomorrow problem, it's a future problem. And I personally don't like to use the word climate change. Perhaps the climate disease, climate disaster might be a better term, all right? So it's not a problem of tomorrow, it's not a problem of future, but it's the problem of now. That I believe each and every one of you that's sitting today here with a different background, that we have a role to play. By the way, this island is irreversible. It's inevitable that they will be gone. And that's why the country has been sending people to Australia, to New Zealand, for them to adapt outside of the country. But what else can we do, right? And the other story that I want to share before going into the topic is this country, Costa Rica. Back then in 1940s, the leaders has the vision that back then, Second World War, back then everybody was investing in military. But the leaders back then was so vision focused that he decided to invest into renewable energy back in 1940s. And what's the result of it? And Costa Rica has been running 100% on renewable energy. And what's more interesting about it is their GDP per capita was actually lower than Malaysia back then, 2014 data. So that shows that we don't have to be rich or advanced country. We don't have to be GDP or certain level to start or to continue the momentum for the green movement. And again, it's not how rich or how advanced, it's how committed, how dedicated on us on this path. And it's definitely a lifestyle from here going on. And if we look at climate change is not something that far from us, but it's very near from us, that the data shows that a baby born today have a lifespan of reduced by 2 years, but just breathing. That's how bad the pollution has become. And this is one of the our cartoon published in 2014, that of course we have rules and regulations on no smoking. But again, we do not have a very strict rules or regulations on the emissions. When you buy a car today with a very bad fuel consumption, fuel efficiency, there's no penalty to it. In fact, we are still enjoying like the lowest price of petrol. Whereas if you look at the neighboring country, they are paying 4, 5, 6 ringgit per liter for the petrol. And if for mechanical engineer here, if you realize, if you check your X-ray standard, they have changed the name from fresh air to outdoor air, which means the fresh air are no longer fresh. And this is a snapshot I took before COVID-19 pandemic. You can see the air quality level at China at that time was constantly beyond 500 AQI. And again, we published an article back then, 2014, on the true cost of fossil fuel, the true cost of the air pollution. Right. Okay, so let's go into what I will cover in the next about 10 minutes is what's a good IEQ? Is it expensive to build a good green building or good IEQ? And what's the factor affecting good thermal comfort? And what's the green IE credits about it? Or is it really expensive to build green from your perspective? So feel free to stop me using chat or just ask any questions. So in your opinion, what is a bad indoor environment? Stuffy, thermally not comfort, too bright, don't feel like to be there, smell weird, very cubicle, or other things. So just type in there, what do you think bad indoor environment? Is it one, is it two, is it all of it, or is it other thing? Terence say all, Azwan say, yep, stuffy, definitely. Okay. Stuffy, no, I'm saying stuffy as well. Any more? Too bright wasn't an issue. Smell weird. Cubicle, you're okay to work inside a cubicle? Oh, Timothy said no, no cubicle. Okay. Right, okay, so next questions. How much time do you think we spend indoors? Is it 30%, 50%, 70%, or 90%? A, B, C, D. C, 70%. Azwan says 70%, Timothy 70%. Any more? 50% we spend indoor. I'm talking about before COVID. During pandemic time, we had to stay indoor 100% of the time. No, they're saying C, 70%. Yugen, 50%. Thank you for the answer. And the fact is we spend 90% indoor, be it at the workplace, at home, and even you stuck inside the traffic, inside the car, you are breathing the car indoor air quality. We are breathing car indoor air quality for almost, for us here, average 2 hours a day if you travel to KL back and forth. And a lot of study has been shown that the indoor pollutant, the indoor air quality can be as bad 2 to 5 times compared to outdoor. So that's why sometimes, if you agree with me, you are working in office too stuffy and just not feeling right, just go out to have a walk and you'll be refreshing. And I really like this quote by Winston Churchill, where we shape our building and afterward that building shaped us. So what Winston Churchill was talking about is the environment. So for us, for most of us here, I believe we as a designer, we have that responsibility to design the environment for the people. And people just look at just don't look at the cost of bad indoor environment, where we look at presentism, where you are there, like you're sitting here, but you're not listening to me. That's called presentism. You are just not being here. We look at the workplace today, that 66 days per year that people are not productive. And partly or majority are coming from the environment they're working at. We published this cartoon as well. It's like, it does not cost viable by designing a bad indoor environmental quality, because 81% of costs are going to the salaries. If you have a very bad IEQ, and that's why a lot of MNC nowadays, a lot of, even though we are working hybridly from home or from office, but even from office, people are looking at the office to be engaging. There's a lot more demand to be, of course, IEQ, And of course, they are looking at the workplace where people feel like want to go to the work every day, right? Why do I want to go to work every day if I can, I don't know, work from home? Or some people prefer work from Starbucks, work from Coffee Bean, right? So good IEQ make economic sense. This is study not done by consultant, not done by Green RE. This is a study done by a real estate company. They are looking at a 20% of productivity from a good temperature control, good improved ventilation, better lighting, daylighting, access to natural environment. And it is twice the rental. By renting in a green office, you can gain back in less than 6 months. And this is a study done by the employee with the view to outside, actually take more cost. This is in the call center. So we're talking about the payback time is 4 months. So it's basically just no brain to just rent in a green design or green indoor air quality. We have this retrofitting projects in Jakarta. Before that, you can look at the left-hand side. The energy was high, 170 BI. You're looking at the temperature, 26 to 31. You look at the RH, is almost 70 over every time. You look at the noise. You look at no daylight, no view out. But after we do the retrofitting, some of the strategy that we put in here. Yeah. So I'll quickly go into what is the Green RE credits all about. But again, credits are a guideline, or we always look into what actually benefit in terms of indoor air quality. For example, thermal comfort. Of course, in terms of the MS1525 that specified indoor range, indoor temperature range 23 to 26 Celsius, RH between 50 to 70. But again, we can design differently. Later, Gregors might show you what is the abnormal design that we're still able to create that thermal comfort from a hybrid ventilation point of view, or from a different floor step cooling point of view. That one Gregors will cover in the next sessions. So this is another myth as well. What are the factors affecting thermal comfort? So apparently, the myth is temperature is the only factor affecting thermal comfort, which is not true. We have surface temperature, we have air temperature, humidity, and of course, what kind of clothing you're wearing. For example, it's a bit cooler day, so that's why you put on jacket. As well, I will address your questions later on. Display the thermostat can get 2 credits. I will address your question later on. So let's move on the ASHRAE 55.1. So this one, I believe you guys have go through the intensive or extensive on using the thermal comfort tool. This is a hybrid ventilation we talk about. Maybe just a quick one. For this project in Singapore, what we do is usually what's the normal air temperature that we supply is about 13 degrees Celsius. Okay, to get that 24, 25, right? We supply at 13 degrees Celsius air. But in this case, because we are running hybrid, so we have ceiling fan, and then we have the mechanical ventilations that give the fresh air. And that's why we are pumping air temperature at 18 degrees Celsius. And we have a ceiling fans there as well. Right. And this is just a chart or a range to determine what's thermal comfort all about. So there's a 2 parameter here, PPD, predicted percentage of dissatisfied, and also predicted mean vote. So we have 0 is neutral, -3 is cold, and 3 is hot. So this is the hybrid ventilation just now I'm talking about. If you see in the middle part, so on the left hand side, no control means you are not allowed to control your fan or the temperature. But if you allow them to control the fan speed, and the satisfaction is about 93%. Yep. So this happened at my own home as well, right? In my bedroom, I have a fan, adjustable speed, DC motor speed with 8 speed, and I have a aircon. So the aircon, sometimes I will set a timer, sometimes I will just few hours, but I can control the fan speed. So if I wake up in the middle of too hot, I will set the fan speed to 8. And if I too cold, or maybe I will just shut off the fan, or I will just turn it on the low speed of a fan. Yep. And some of the example you can find in the here on how to actually design, like if you want to have a fresh air, do you want to pre-treated it, some of the example to have a better thermal comfort design. So we're not going to detail of that, but feel free to ask me any questions later on, or you can ask me in the chat. I will address it later on. So in terms of the next requirement is the noise level. Of course, designing a good noise level office. I believe a lot of MNC are looking at it right now, especially we have to do online, or we have to do a lot of sound treatment. Of course, if you can meet this requirement of a Green IE. Of course, during the design, as a designer, you are looking at where's the noise coming from, where's the AHU room, where's the supply grill, what's the wall treatment for AHU, are you doing installations on your ducting, and again, fan static and type of motor, fan curve as well, all this will affect the noise level. Of course, the interesting one is double glazing unit actually do prevent the noise from the outside. So this is just an example of the treatment. And I believe now the low VOC or indoor air pollutant is kind of norm in the market right now. So yep, so interesting that still keep this credit in, but again, it's very important in terms of keeping our indoor air quality to be cleaner from the outside. This is during the construction where we try to prevent a lot of dust to accumulate inside the building. So the dust can be inside the equipment, inside the ducting, or the water coming in and stay there. And then once completing the time, you see mold. And all this require effort, effort from contractor, from consultant, from developer, because our country, to be honest, right, very hot and humid, and yep, and all this dust really need to be taken care of. Yep. And of course, when it comes to the air filtration, AHU, I always recommend a electrostatic filter, where you can actually reduce the static as well as give you at least MERV 13 of a filtration. The traditional might give you a higher statics, and the electrostatic is less maintenance, and we love less maintenance stuff, right? And high frequency ballast, I believe this is very market norm right now. I believe I don't recall a lot of magnetic ballast nowadays. Or you use LED. LED is more common nowadays. And again, LED, either you have to check the efficiency, the durability, and also I believe we do not have the L70 standard yet in Malaysia. But again, there's a lot of requirement coming up in terms of LED. But of course, Green IE might look into it in the future. So that's all for indoor environmental quality part. I will pass it to Gregors. So Azwan questions, meaning displaying the thermostat at all applicable area can get 2 credits. So in terms of displaying, additional 1 credit will be awarded for room temperature and humidity display in all applicable area. Yep. So if you have the digital thermostat, which allow people to have a look at what's the room temperature and humidity, that will allow for the 2nd credit, a digital display. And take note on the locations of the thermostat as well. A lot of projects very hard to implement because you have tenant coming in. and then your thermostat was actually hiding somewhere above the ceiling. We have a project, very hard to find where to put it because the tenant coming in and they want to retrofit it, and the contractor just throw away the thermostat. So you have to specify to the FM team that thermostat has to be at the human height level. So either 1.5 to 3 meter height, which is good enough for people to have a look and allow people to adjust. But again, you can control it with BMS also. Yep. So with that, just stop sharing. So any more questions, you can just put in the chat. Gregors or I will have a look at it later on. So next, I will pass it to Gregors. Just share the screen.
Thank you. I'll just start talking a little bit. So in case you wonder, I don't look Malaysian, so I'm only half Malaysian from the fact that I've lived and worked in Malaysia for the last 17 years. But I'm originally from Denmark. So I will talk to you about the green innovation features. So just take a seat. Just the camera a little bit. Great. So so this is what I call the exciting credit, because this is where you can actually have a chance to try something new, think out of the box, and be innovative. And of course, it's also it's difficult to exactly say what is an innovation because, for example, solar panels, that used to be an innovation, but now it's become quite common. So it's a sort of a moving field. Here's an image of an innovation I quite liked, where when you go to wash your hands, you make eye contact with this goldfish, and once you start washing your hand, you see the water level dropping in the bowl. So it's sort of using this innovative approach for you not to waste water, to save the life of this fish. But of course, whatever innovative feature you do, it also has to have a real impact. So you can't just come up with something that is maybe interesting, but if it has no real impact, you will not be awarded the points. So innovation doesn't have to be super complicated or super high tech, as I'll show you on this slide. The readings here show some very interesting temperature measurements that were done here in Malaysia, in some kampung houses in Johor. And you can notice from the axis, the horizontal one, the outdoor axis, goes from 22 degrees to 36 degrees. And the vertical axis, which is the indoor temperature, also goes from 22 to 36. So this stippled line that runs at a 45-degree angle between the two means that if you're along this line, you will have exactly the same temperature outdoors as you do indoors. And as you can see from these detailed temperature measurements in this kampung house, the data follows more or less that 45-degree line, but they're shifted about 1 degree up. So that means a kampung house is basically 1 degree warmer than the outdoor climate throughout the day. So following common wisdom that it more or less follows the outdoor climate. So this PhD student also did some similar measurements for a terraced house. See, yeah, here, which is much more common, of course, for modern living in Malaysia. And you immediately notice then that the temperature data is now much more flat. And the reason for that is that there's much more thermal mass in these houses. So the outdoor temperature might vary up and down, but thanks to the thermal mass of the house, it sort of stabilizes the temperature more in the house. So the advantage is on the hot days where you have, let's say, 35 degrees outside, then if you look at the top curve here, you only have 32 degrees inside the house, because the thermal mass heat helps to keep the house cold or cooler. But the disadvantage is that at night, when it's nice and cool outside, let's say about 24 degrees, then if you look at this top curve, you're still stuck with about 29 degree temperature inside your house. So this PhD student who was from Japan, he asked himself, how come people in Malaysia are opening the windows in the daytime when it's hot outside and letting in the hot air, and then at night when it's nice and cool, they don't open the windows? So he was allowed to change the operation of the windows, so he switched it around. So he kept the windows closed in the day when it's hot, and then at night he opened the windows to let the cool outdoor air in. And just from doing that, you can see he got that second set of measurements, which is the parallel line that runs below the other one. And he managed basically to drop the temperature in the house by about 2 degrees, both day and night. So a very innovative, simple way to significantly improve the thermal comfort of the house. Of course, there's many reasons why people don't open the windows at night. It has to do with mosquitoes. It might have to do with street noise if you live near a busy street, so you can't sleep. It has to do maybe with safety. You're afraid people might climb through the window at night. So there are, of course, ways to still get around that. And a very simple way, which you can also use in apartment buildings and so on, is to install a little mechanical fan. So at night, you can set it so it blows air into the house. And there can be some filters, so it can filter out any dust. There can be sort of a noise dampening installation as well, so you don't hear the street noise. There'll be, of course, a mosquito grill, and you can even have better filtration. So for haze, during haze season, you can actually get fairly clean air into your home. So this kind of night ventilation could be an innovation, drawing upon sort of vernacular architecture in a way that is quite effective. Then I think Suwan also touched on this, and I'm sure some of your other lecturers have too, thermal comfort. So instead of saying I need 24 degrees in the room, the real question to ask is, are you comfortable? Because there's many different ways of making people comfortable. So you probably noticed just now, Suwan is, because it's raining today, so it's a bit cold in the office. He's wearing a vest. I'm a Viking from the cold north, so I'm perfectly fine in a shirt. Actually, I even folded up my sleeves because I feel a bit warm. So therefore, 24 degrees is not the magic bullet, right? People are also different, and you can deliver this thermal comfort in different ways. So the simple way is basically that if you have a ceiling fan, or in other ways provide a breeze in the office, as you can see on this chart. So once you increase the airspeed along the vertical y-axis, then the operative temperature in the space can shift to the right. So instead of having 24 degrees, you could suddenly make do with a temperature that's about 2 degrees warmer. So we have been doing this kind of thing for some projects, and one interesting project we tried this out for is for an office building that has a naturally ventilated atrium. And the idea was that people should go down for lunch, but of course it's quite hot in this atrium during lunch. So we looked at how comfortable are they during lunch. This is an online calculator that you can also use yourself. And once we type this in, we can see that 66% of the people would feel uncomfortable. They would basically have this feeling of being warm. So we looked at, could we improve this? So of course, the obvious thing is to put a big fan that can provide this breeze. And then now we are left with just 25% feeling uncomfortable. But we still want to see if we can get everyone into the thermal comfort zone. So one innovation we proposed for this project was to try to exploit the night cooling, because at night the roof actually gets quite cool. It gets about 2 degrees cooler than the outdoors. So we basically designed these sort of night cooling. Well, there's just 2 birds flying by. Very nice. I haven't seen like cranes almost. Oh, sorry. But yeah, so we designed these night sky cooling collectors where we cool down about 12,000 liters of water to about 17 degrees. And this can be done completely passively at night if you use a special kind of membrane. And the idea is then that before lunch every day in this atrium, we would have what we call scheduled rain. So we release these 12,000 liters of water that will sort of help to wet the atrium. Of course, it's designed in a way so the water seeps away, so it's not slippery or anything. We also embedded some water pipes in some of the surfaces, so we can basically help to cool down with this water the whole space. And then in combination with that fan, we can actually get inside the thermal comfort zone. So, so this is sort of an innovative way of having a lunch atrium that's naturally ventilated, but where we make everybody thermally comfortable, even though the temperature the air temperature is 30 degrees. But because we can reduce the mean radiant temperature of the whole space, then we can do this without using much energy at all. I mean, the only energy is for this ceiling fan. So this same principle we are doing for some schools, and that works quite well. So where we combine some ceiling fans with then the ability to increase the air temperature in the space. Another innovative feature is to have this concrete that can be used for parking lots, or I've actually seen this in a lot of schools where you have all these naturally ventilated corridors, but then when the rain comes and you have this driving rain, it gets very wet and slippery, and a whole sort of army of people come out and try to mop it up, and that's just really, I mean, imagine designing a school like that, and then every time it rains, people have to come out and sort of dry all the corridor areas. That will be very costly actually in terms of human power for 30 years plus. So you can actually get these kind of very permeable materials that you can play this video on your own. But basically this truck dumps a lot of water and it just disappears immediately inside this concrete. And then of course below the concrete there's a drainage system that brings the water away for rainwater harvesting. And also instead of sort of ugly drains, you can have these kind of infiltration trenches that becomes a landscape feature and looks quite nice. So let me just tell you a bit about quite an innovative project. There was the first one I did when I came to Malaysia. It's the Green Tech Malaysia building, or the GEO building in Bangi. And it was basically designed to be a zero energy building. And the two energy concepts that we pursued was to make the energy consumption over the year zero, but also to over a 24-hour period to try to shift the energy consumption to happen mostly at night, where you have a lower demand in the national grid, and then in the daytime where you have the peak grid demand, we try to export energy to the grid. So we basically try to help TNB, the power utility, by shifting the power consumption to night. So how do we do that? Well, let me just show you first the overall energy consumption. So a normal office buildings consumes about 200 kilowatt hours per square meter per year. For this building, we designed it to be 35, and then we would have the equivalent amount of production from solar panels. But in reality, we didn't get it to that low, so we got an energy consumption of 64, but we didn't have any extra allocation for solar panels. Back then, solar panels cost 6 times more than they do today, so it was very expensive. So therefore, it actually never became a zero energy building, but it was very close, and actually 2 years ago it was awarded the ASEAN Zero Energy Building Award together with the SDE4 building in Singapore. So at long last we were recognized for the effort. But anyway, let me just show you. This is the grid demand curve in Peninsular Malaysia. So you can see the peak happens here in the early afternoon, where they will often have to power up an extra power plant just to meet those extra kilowatt hours. So we wanted to sell electricity during this period. So this we can do with solar panels. And we had 4 different roofs, all building integrated PV, and different types as well, amorphous and poly silicon and so on. And then at night we wanted to buy electricity, but of course it's an office building, so it's empty. So what would we use this electricity for? Well, we would produce cooling and then store it thermally in the building. And for this purpose, we had 2 thermal storage systems. One is a floor slab cooling, which I'll talk about more, and the other one is a phase change material tank. So they stored cooling at 2 different temperatures. Here you can see a schematic of this building, and what's interesting is that you see there's a chiller, and to the right, that's where all the cooling goes. And to the left, there's no cooling tower, because we realized that the chiller only runs at night. Then we could just put the warm sort of condenser water over the solar panels, because the roof would be cool because it's night, right? There's no sun shining, so we could just get rid of all the heat that way. And then on this side, we are then storing at night in this phase change material tank and in the floor slabs. Sorry, so if I just go one back. So the idea is that then in the daytime, because we have this stored cooling, the floor slabs just give off this cooling passively to the spaces. And the phase change material tank, you just run a small pump through this tank, and then you can tap out all this cooling. It's basically like an ice, but it melts at 10 degrees. So here's the water going over the PV roof, the solar roof. And you can play these videos, but you can basically see the manifold pipe here at the top of the roof, and then it basically runs all the way down and is collected back here. So when this runs throughout the night, then of course we clean the PV, and that means the next morning there's no dust on the solar panels, and they will also work more effectively. And of course, this will also double up as a rainwater harvesting system. And it, as I mentioned, it's a building integrated PV, so it actually also replaces the roof. So there's a lot of innovations here, and through this kind of integrated design. So how much cooling can you actually get rid of from the roof at night? So here we took one of these temperature guns, and where you can measure the surface temperature, and pointed it to the sky, and you can see that actually most nights, this was measured over 6 nights, we measure about 10 degrees or maybe even lower. So the sky is actually quite cool, and that means when we have this 36 degree hot water, it's sort of having this radiation exchange with at just 10 degrees sky, and therefore you can actually get most of the heat sort of ejected that way. And the good thing about this kind of cooling through radiation to the sky is that you are not relying on evaporation, which is what we do in cooling towers. That's why you see sort of sometimes some steam coming out, almost all this evaporated water. So by cooling this water to the night sky, there's no evaporation, and therefore your top-up water is close to zero, because there's very little evaporation at night, because the relative humidity is close to 100% anyway at night. So it also helps them to save a lot of water by doing this. So the phase change material tank looks like this. It's basically a bunch of sort of plastic packs, and inside there's a special salt solution that freezes at 10 degrees. So to charge this, you have to have at least 7-degree water. So you're a bit below, otherwise you won't get it to freeze. This means we can just use a normal chiller. And then once we have this tank, then in the daytime we can just run the water through, and then the water starts, these ice packs start to melt, and then they give off all this cooling on, you could say they absorb the heat from the water. So it's a smart way to store cooling. And for all the floors and ceilings, we had this kind of floor slab cooling system, where these pipes are laid, and on top of this, of course, there's a screening. So they're basically embedded in the concrete slab, and that means every night we just run in 18-degree water, cool down the whole floor to about 21 degrees or so, and then this cooling is released passively to the spaces throughout the next day. So therefore, there's only sort of a 1 degree temperature swing of this whole thermal mass of the floors. So it's quite an easy way to cool, and it's sort of self-regulating as well, because if it suddenly becomes very hot, let's say a lot of sun comes in, the temperature difference increases, and therefore more cooling will be given off. Here you can see how the pipes are laid. And here you can see some simulations. So for example, if you look at the ceiling surface temperature, then it's cooled down to about 20 degrees in the morning, and then during the day it gives off that cooling or absorbs the heat from the office. So end of the office day is 23 degrees, and then the next night is cooled down again. So you have this 1 degree temperature swing, and that's the thermal storage basically. So 40% of the cooling of the building is done this way. And the other advantage of doing this is that when you feed 18-degree water into the slab, the lift of your chiller is much reduced, because you don't have to cool water down to about 6 or 7 degrees, which is a typical chilled water supply temperature. So therefore, so often we would be down here delivering about 6-degree water. Now you're delivering 18-degree water, and you can see the COP, which is the coefficient of performance, which is the efficiency of the chiller, actually has increases a lot. This is the theoretical max. We can't achieve this kind of performance, but we can definitely something like double the efficiency of the chiller. And we've shown this for other projects as well. Another innovation for this building was the daylight system. So we introduced this kind of split window design, and at first view it looks like it could be quite glary with these top windows, but you can't see it on this image. But there's actually an embedded blind inside the glazing, and actually I have a sample here in my office just opposite me. You can see it here standing in the window with the blind inside. This was the prototype sample we made before we went to full installation. And oh yeah, sorry, there's a photo of that. So here it is. So the advantage of this is that this window, you cannot look out through the top window, so there's no glare, but daylight can still come through. Let me just go back to this one. So you can see the diffuse light can reflect off this mirror light shelf on the outside and then travel parallel to these louvers and onto the ceiling and further into the space. So we tried to see, okay, what is the daylight level then? Because we had simulated this and so on. And it worked very well. We put a light lux meter here at this table, and then we put one on the roof of the building. And you can see that the outdoor lux that we measured was varied quite a lot, from about 20,000 lux, which is overcast, to a fully sunny day, which is more than 100,000 lux. But the concurrent measurements we measured inside were in just the right range, so between 300 to 600 lux. So there was a very big variation in the outdoor light level, but the indoor light level was very stable. And the reason for that is that we designed the building to have the facades facing north and south, and we had enough overhang on the outside of the building, so no direct light comes into the building. So whether the sun is out or not doesn't matter, because this very harsh and warm and glary direct sunlight never gets into the building. We only collected diffuse light from the sky, which is much more stable and much less glary and much more pleasant. And then we get this kind of very nicely daylit space.
The occupant was saying that it hardly turn on any light.
That's right. So, and we could also see that from the measurements. So we monitored this building quite closely for half a year, and we could see that the measured lighting consumption, both of the general office lighting as well as the task lights, they were all given a task light, which was wired separately. So we also measured that. So the combination of that only added up to 0.56 watts per square meter of lighting consumption during the office hours. And this is 25 times lower than the code requirement. So a very good saving. So it's not a 25% saving, it's a factor 25 saving. So these are the kind of savings we like. Another innovation was we sandwiched the solar panels inside the atrium. So you actually got quite a beautiful atrium space with this kind of light pattern moving about the atrium during the day, but also giving exactly the right amount of daylight. So you can leave the lights off, and some of this light spills into the offices as well. That's why we chose a white floor. For daylighting, it doesn't have to be this advanced. That's what we did. So you can watch this video on your own time. A very nice short little story about how people use water bottles to get daylight in the sort of the poorer neighborhoods of the Philippines. Okay, I'm a little bit aware of time, so this is also one of our projects. I'll just zoom a little bit forward here and show you. This is a nice illustration of the floor slab cooling, where we also laid it in the top of the bottom. And I'll just show you the measurements. So here we measured how much chilled water we are feeding to the building. So the blue measurements are for the air handling unit. So this is sort of the normal aircon, and the red ones show the cooling put into the floor slabs. So if we take, let's say, Wednesday here, you can see that the night leading up to Wednesday, so starting around 10 p.m. Tuesday night, we start feeding water into the slabs at 18 degrees. And this is then cooling down the structure of the building. And then we switch that off early in the morning around 6 or 7. And then shortly after, the aircon is switched on and runs the building sort of normally as a normally aircon building. So the amount of cooling that is delivered is basically the area under the graph. So you can see the area under the red curve is about 40% of the area under the or sorry, is 40% to the red and 60% to the blue. So that means 40% of the cooling is actually done this innovative way through the floor slab cooling. It also helps if you have a power cut or something and the aircon stops working, the floor slabs will keep working. So the office is actually sort of less, I mean, still cool and less uncomfortable to be in those kind of situations. And here we were lucky to do some measurements of the temperatures because everyone is always worried, does water condense on the ceiling? And the answer is no, because this is the dew point is down here. It's about 17 degrees. And you can see that during normal operation, which is here, the ceiling temperature, the red one, gets down to about 21 degrees. So it never crosses the dew point, which is 17. So therefore, no condensation will happen, except when you get a new building facility team into the building, which happened the week before, and where they decided for some reason to manually override the how the system operates. So instead of supplying 18-degree water into the slab, they just took normal 7-degree chilled water, and therefore the temperatures dropped a lot of the ceiling, as you can see here, and dropped below the dew point, and therefore you basically had droplets forming, and it was sort of raining in the offices for these 3 days. Then they went back to panic, went back to the setting before, and then maybe more complaints, I don't know, from whatever, and then they switched off the system for a couple of weeks. And that means that the room temperature, which is the black one, you can see is actually getting a bit warmer outside. I mean, a bit sort of too high, because the whole system was designed to have both cooling coming from the floor slab and the normal aircon. So we're lucky to have some sensors measuring this. This happened about 2 years after the building was taken into use. So actually you get all those 3 situations where we have normal operation, we have the wrong operation where they cool it down too much, and then operation where there's no floor slab cooling working. So everything contained in one graph right there.
Chris, there's a question. Is there a post-occupancy done for dining building?
Yeah, there's a post-occupancy. It was part of the green certification. So both for this building got GPI Platinum, and it also got Green Mark Platinum. And if there's more than 80% of the occupants that were unhappy about the comfort or the visual comfort or the air quality or whatever, we had to take corrective action. And to my recollection, the satisfaction level was very high. There was one thing we had to correct, which I can't remember offhand because it's so many years ago, but we basically brought it in order. But yeah, I'm going there tomorrow for an open house, so I can ask. We still have a very good relationship with them, and this is still the same facility manager.
Jack was asking, is the response different, or because it's, I think, let me understand it correctly from Jack, is because it's a rather different system, so is the occupant react differently? Is that your question, Jack?
My question is, because this system has less airflow from the HVAC system, right? So does the occupant feel slightly uncomfortable? Because as I understand that we Asians, right, adapted to the kind of environment where we need a very high airflow. So if we use this kind of radiant cooling system, will they feel that the air is slightly stagnant in the building?
Yep, that's a very good question, and actually a lesson that we learned from the first building, the Geo building I showed you, where we basically, you would say, took advantage of the fact that we could downsize the whole aircon system, the HUs, but then we actually learned that people thought that there was too little air movement, because in Malaysia and in the tropics, the wind is your friend. So feeling some air passing by your body, like in the old houses you just opened up the kampong house and took advantage of any breeze that would go through the house. So the wind is your friend, and if people don't feel any air movement, culturally or psychologically or whatever, it's not acceptable. In Denmark, where I'm from, where it's very windy and cold, the average temperature is 8 degrees. So we always look forward to getting out of the wind and into a warm building where there's no air movement. So this was so for the Green Tech Malaysia building, we were like, yeah, we looked at our instruments. Yeah, temperature is good, humidity is good. I don't think we measured the air velocity, but so we're like, yeah, so everyone should be thermally comfortable, and that was not the case because people couldn't feel the air movement. So for the Diamond building, we corrected that and basically made sure to size the AHUs normally, so they could produce the same amount of air movement, but then we regulated the coil temperature so they didn't give off so much cooling. So we still saved on the cooling, but in terms of moving air around, that was close to what you would normally expect in an office building.
Okay.
In Malaysia. Yep.
Thanks.
Welcome. Okay, so I'll just go a little bit fast because I think we're over time and I have to go by latest 4:30. This is a retrofit, where we also did some innovative, especially on the daylighting. And also what was interesting here was we had some windows that were quite leaky, as they often are I mean, quite poor quality, sort of the aluminum frames. There was a noisy street outside, air was coming in everywhere. And for this retrofit, to keep costs down as well, we just left that in place. But on the windowsill itself, we added a clear pane window that could be removed for cleaning if that was needed once in a while. So this reduced the noise from the outside. It also helped to reduce the air leakage, and it worked really well. So it's sort of illustrated here. We also implemented some daylight systems, so we reflected light into the ceiling, which also worked really well. As you can see on this image, you can clearly see all the light coming in. So no need to switch on the light anymore, and so on. So and then we reduced the energy consumption by 53%. Because we had the bills before and after. So a very good case study, and you got a much nicer office out of it. I almost couldn't believe it when I came to the final room, because we also changed the ID with the bamboo flooring and everything. So it was really an upgrade to this building. Another innovation is for daylighting. So this is a high-rise building in Damansara Padana. And we basically, from the inside, it looks like kind of an ordinary office with a suspended ceiling, and then the lights are on. But the thing is, this light is actually coming from the facade. So what we did was we above the suspended ceiling where it meets the facade, we put a clear window, and then above this part of the suspended ceiling, we put in these kind of reflectors. So we had sort of a light duct, and then this is also facing north and south. So the direct light didn't really come in. It was shaded by this overhang, but we get this diffuse light coming in. So after 1-2 bounces, it gets in. And these are actual measurements that we did. So you can see here we have the blind. The blind is down to about a meter or so from the floor, because that's quite typical. People will need to cut the glare. So even though we don't get much light in from the facade, then you can see the light levels drop. And then once we get about 4 meters into the space, we get this daylight coming in from this daylight system, as you see here. So that means that even when you have your blinds down, we can still have a daylit office for the first 7 meters. And that is quite innovative, and I don't know if anyone else has done this, but I've actually written an article about this. It's coming out in the next Future Arc magazine issue. So if you are interested in reading more, you can have a look. then I'll just go past this. So I'll just mention briefly on this Sarawak Energy Berhad HQ, which we also designed to be an energy efficient building. But one of the innovative things that we did was we took the AHU condensate, because in office spaces, basically about half of the humidity has been removed from the air. So we don't have all this humidity from outside, right? And this condensate typically runs out of the AHU room and into the drain. So we thought that's a shame. And this water is also fairly cool. So we thought, why don't we collect it and run it into these water features at the bottom of the atrium? Because this was a naturally ventilated atrium, so it would be nice to get a bit of free cooling. And you can see from these thermographic images exactly where the pipe is this little black dot, and then the water sort of collects here. So these water features helped to cool down this atrium free of charge by just collecting this AHU condensate, and then the overflow of that can go to the rainwater harvesting tank. So you can have a look at the video as well here. This is also from the same building. You can have a look at your own. And then lastly, I'll just mention that PV is not really an innovation anymore, but you can now get PV that doesn't look like PV. So solar panels can look like normal facade panels, as you can see from this photo. So therefore, I think that's a bit of a game changer and also a bit of an innovation, because a lot of architects think solar panels are really ugly and they don't want them. And if they're on the roof, they don't want them to be seen because they're sort of an eyesore. But now solar panels can actually become like your normal building fabric. And actually you can get printed PV where you can get any design you want. So if you want your company logo or anything like that, this can also be a solar panel. Of course, we're in the tropics, so the sun is mostly overhead. So once you tilt the solar panels to vertical position, you already lose about half of the annual yield. But solar prices, of course, keep dropping. And in countries like Singapore, you can already make the economic case for putting solar panels on the facade. In Malaysia, where energy prices is maybe a bit more cheaper, maybe that case is not quite there yet, but this is coming. And then, of course,
a question asking the
yep.
building risk. I think the last time you said is it the University of
yeah.
Is it the University of Yamak? Is it technical or the University of?
Yeah, I mean, is it this building or on the slide? Or yeah. This building is some kind of test setup somewhere, but there is we are doing this for a building in Gombak, so north of KL, and it's a building that belongs to the University of Kuala Lumpur, and it's going to be launched in July. I think they just set the date. The construction is already ongoing. And we have this big printed PV wall that is about 9 meters long and 6 meters tall or something, where we will have the university logo and all that. I can't show you the images because we'll save that for the launch, but this is, yeah, just stay tuned. And we'll definitely put something on our website. One of the ministers is supposed to come and launch this. So, and that building is actually zero energy. It's actually plus energy, so it's producing more energy than it consumes. So, and then I think another innovation that's interesting is that windows, which can also produce energy. So, most windows in most office buildings in Malaysia will cut at about 50% of the light because it's just so bright and glary here. So instead of putting a tint, why don't we just make sure that we put some solar panels embedded in the in the glass. So that sort of blocking of the sun doesn't just heat up the window, it actually helps to produce electricity. So these kind of solar windows are also not really on the market yet, but it's definitely an innovation, and I think there will be a big future for this as well. So keep a lookout for that. So yeah, so maybe I'll just end there, and then we can have a few. Maybe after the discussion, I don't know. Yeah, I'll stop the share. You can come back over, or you can just pull that chair, and then we can.
Yep.
So let's see, were there any other questions? That was it, I think. Any other questions?
I think the most FAQ or frequently asked question on innovation is what constitute a point in green RE, right? I think we have mentioned this quite a lot of time, is it have to be impactful.
Yeah.
And it have to be out of norm, like PV is a norm right now. Where the solar panel is still innovative, or is still cutting edge. So
Yeah,
and it has to be impactful as well. It's just like one small facade to have that is not sufficient. Obviously.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, we welcome any other questions. And meanwhile, let me just pull out one last.
So yeah, so I think the field of innovation is a moving target. So it's really up to the Green RE assessors to end of the day decide, is this still an innovation or not? So I think we, if there's no more questions, I think we just wanted to repeat the poll.
Yeah.
Hand it over to Suan and see if we've changed anyone's minds.
Yeah. So I mean, you can log into menti.com again. Just use this code 15458958. I mean, with all the I have shown you in early stage, we are looking at ROI in 4 months. I mean, if you look at the diamond building, the jewel building, both of them, where we measure the ROI in terms of financial ROI, is about what, less than 3 years. And I mean, right now when we inject the productivity, how the space has encouraged more productivity, and that in return of the ROI, we look at 4 months, 6 months time. And if we look at the innovative idea, where just turn on just open up the window at night can give you 2 degrees Celsius lower. We're talking about providing desk light, task light to reduce the LPD. And of course, in terms of thermal comfort, in our office and a lot of office, I can see that instead of adjusting to lower temperature, now they are giving the table fan or even the stand fan. I mean, a lot of idea to be innovative. It doesn't have to be costly. And I think, again, we have to look into the impact in terms of the built environment, because we are building the building for the next 50 to 100 years. Nobody built the building for 10 years or 15 years, right? Yeah. So just help us to go to menti.com again. Key in the code 15458958. I mean, what's your thought after I was sharing today? Are you still think that it's not? Is because when you look at the cost on not on ringgit or cents point of view, or not just from the financial point of view, it's so much other thing, right? We are not looking at health yet, I mean, what's the health cost to the occupant in the building if it wasn't conducive or healthy enough to work in. Yeah.
So we only received 5, right? From
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
we have,
There is another 3.
I think we have 9
We have
participants.
8. We have 8.
Oh,
Eight,
8.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 5 out of 8. Okay, not too bad.
Yeah. I got my friend here. Chua. Chua is here.
Uh-huh.
Chua. Have you met Chua?
Hi, Gregors. Hi, Suha.
Hi. Good to see you again.
Yep.
Is it expensive to
answered.
build green, Chua?
Yeah.
I answered no.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we can end
Yeah.
here.
Is there any
So-
other questions for Mr. Gregors and Suan?
You took the screen down. Right?
Yeah, I will
Yeah.
have save on that.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, yeah, I think that's all from our end.
Yeah.
I also have to run off shortly, so
Okay.
thank you for
Thank you.
tuning
Yeah.
in.
Thank you so much, speakers from IEN, Mr. Suan and Mr. Gregors, and also all of you. And we will continue for the last day of the course for tomorrow, okay, at 9:30 a.m. All right, thank you so much, both of you, and all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good luck with your course and
Yeah.
the submission.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.